What's up, St. Louis? Jamal Mayers here. Want a chance to watch the Blues like an insider with me? When you become an annual STL Sports Central insider, you're automatically entered to win. We're picking 2 winners, each bringing a guest to join me in the Blues Alumni Suite for the game versus the Edmonton Oilers on Friday, March 13th. That's right, Connor McDavid. We'll have free drinks, heavy appetizers, and an unforgettable night of Blues hockey. Sign up now at STL Sports Central, and I'll see you at the game.
Okay. He wanted to build a betting line for both Donovan and Thomas to go. I want you to tell the viewing audience here at STL Sports Central what happened as you built these betting lines.
So the betting line is going to be pretty simple. We're going to create fictional lines that I created on my own of how likely it is that the Cardinals trade Brendan Donovan, how likely it is, or unlikely, you can go the other way, the Blues are to trade Robert Thomas, how likely it is that both would happen, a little two-leg parlay for the both to happen, or a two-leg parlay for them not to happen. And as I was building this, I had my Donovan number and I had my Thomas number, and just on my own mind, I was like, I'll throw together what the two-leg parlay number would probably be. And I was like, okay, I want to be a little bit more locked in. Sometimes we get crap in the comments that I'm a little bit off on some of my facts because I don't always 100% write them down, and I'm picking from the brain and things like that. So I'm like, fine, I'll do the exact thing. So my prediction on my odds was that the two-leg parlay for them both to happen would be plus 1,200. I put it into a gambling calculator and it was plus 1,220. And so I might be on, I'm using DraftKings exactly as much as I should because I'm starting to lock in these numbers. So which STL prize target would you bet on to go? Here is the fictional numbers that I have given for the Cardinals and the Blues. I'm going plus 120 on Brendan Donovan, plus 500, because at this point, in my opinion, it's unlike I'm on the 50% side that they won't be traded. So you're getting plus money on Donovan. You're getting a little bit more plus money on Thomas. Obviously, there's the math playing out for the both of plus 220. And then the math here was a little bit different. If I would have gone like full VIG on the opposite numbers, like the opposite of plus 500 isn't minus 500. The opposite of plus 500 is usually like minus 760. So if I would have done the actual like full VIG opposite, I think the odds on the neither parlay would be a little bit higher, but I feel like at this point it is the most likely option. So I'm not giving you plus money. You got to give me $105 to win 100 on the neither, but I'm giving you plus money on Donovan, Thomas, and both. What are people taking in this little Blues and Cardinals trade parlay? That's what I want to know. Jump into the chat. By the way, the chat, very not very fact-based. There's loving everybody. Craig Lewis says, good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Nancy Pat says, hello, STL sports fans.
Hello, Nancy
Stephen Burns says, good afternoon to everybody, as does Bubs, although Bubs is a good afternoon. So hello to everybody in the chat. Let me know if you're buying on any of these odds for the Cardinals and the Blues prize target trades. We know both of them are wanted by teams all over the NHL, but will either of them go, or neither of them go, or one of them go? You make the choice in the chat right now.
One of the things that I think that we need to point out now, because we've been talking about the possibility of Brendan Donovan leaving and being traded for a long time. Well, we're less than 2 weeks away from the start of spring training. And if I am the Seattle Mariners and I'm at this point now and I haven't traded for Brendan Donovan, I'm going to see what I've got in Leo Rivas at second base. I'll take a look and give opportunities to people other than, and I can always get Brendan Donovan during spring training, but I can get Rivas. I can take a look at Cole Young, who's a young player, and maybe he is a guy that could emerge as a second baseman. Same thing if you're the Giants, and I know that Tony Vitello likes Brendan Donovan. Obviously, he, as a Cardinal fan, has watched him a lot. He's familiar with him. But if you're the Giants, then you've got to take a look at your other guys. And by the way, the Giants, when they were, apparently they made a big move for C.J. Abrams, and they were going to play him at second base. But they've got Tyler Fitzgerald. They can try him there. There's some things that the Giants can do. Casey Schmidt could move over to second base because they've got Chapman at third. Why not take a look, if you're one of these teams, at the people that you have rather than jumping into a trade right away and giving up prospects.
By the way, Enrico Palazzo, of course, he says, hey, I'm not a gambling degenerate, so I don't know what those numbers mean. You don't got to be a degenerate. You just got to be a little bit educated. Let's dive in really quickly. So what the numbers mean, if you're getting plus numbers, that means you're getting odds. That means you can make more money. So the plus number just means that you need to if you bet $100, you would win whatever the number following that plus sign is. So if you bet $100 on Thomas to get traded at plus 500 and he gets traded, bam, you just won $500. So minuses work the opposite way. You take the number that is is after the minus, and that's how much you have to bet to win $100. So at plus 105, you would win $105 for every 100 you bet. But on a minus 105, to win $100, you have to bet 105. So if it was minus 500, you'd have to bet $500 to win 100. So that's kind of the breakdown on what the numbers mean, Enrico Palazzo. So if you don't think either of them are going to happen, you're willing to give up $5 extra to win that $100 on neither. But if you're feeling really good about Donovan going, I'm giving you a little extra money.
All right, let's get 55 Harmonies chat up here. Are the podcasters suggesting that the St. Louis front office is not making counter offers after a potential trade partner approaches the Cardinals with an initial offer? The Cardinals have no problem at all with having Brendan Donovan on their team. So if somebody calls the Cardinals and said, here's what I've got for Brendan Donovan, the Cardinals say, that's not enough. So that's their counter offer. They say that they have to be overwhelmed by a team trying to get Brendan Donovan from them. So, yeah, I think that is a safe suggestion. Same thing with the Blues. If somebody calls and says, hey, I want Robert Thomas, and I will give you a first and a second round draft choice, the Blues just say, no, you got to do better than that. And then they allow the other team. But no, the Cardinals are not going and to the Mariners, for example, and saying, yeah, we really want to get rid of Brendan Donovan. So we're going to, we want X, Y, and Z for Brendan Donovan. They want other teams to make that offer. And as we said, and this happens in a lot of negotiations, the Cardinals are listening actively, but they aren't making the phone calls and they aren't making the offers. The other teams need to make the phone calls and make the offers. So good question. We appreciate it, but that's exactly where the Cardinals stand with this.
Completely fair. Let's go through Uncle Sam's saying neither. I feel like I'm giving good, like based on the numbers, I feel like neither probably should have been like plus 150. So I'm probably not giving you good odds on that one. But hey, take it either. Bub says Donovan or neither. I don't think anyone here is taking Thomas. I might have had to give Thomas like plus 1,000 if I was going to get anybody jumping in on Thomas. Craig Lewis says Donovan or no one looks good as well. Bub says good betting line is Donnie. It's most likely that he doesn't get moved, but that's your best bet at making money on these bets. Yeah, I'm trying to get people to bite a little bit on the Robert Thomas just because there's so many rumors, but it's just we keep going through it. It's just the just doesn't make as much sense to me. It would baffle me in the way of rebuilding. To move a guy who's so young on such a cheap contract with so many years left, it's just unless you're absolutely. It's the same thing like if we're talking about NHL trades. It's kind of like why I'm a little confused on the Shane Wright trade that people keep throwing out because like I get the ones where people are like, well, they trade Shane Wright to actually get like a 27-year-old who's more experienced and actually improves the team. But there's some people who are like talking about how the Blues can get Shane Wright for like Braden Shen and some picks or something like that. And I'm like, why would Seattle trade a guy who's 24 or 20? He might even be younger than that right now. My apologies. Why would they trade a guy who is 22? My apologies. Yeah. And at one time had number 1 pick talent and fell in the draft.
It was only number 4.
Yeah. Why would they move him for Braden Shen? I understand why they trade him for a different package, but I don't understand why people think that move would make sense for the Kraken.
And Seattle is not that they're exactly like the Blues, but they aren't. They also don't fancy themselves as a team that needs a piece like Braden Shen to get over the top. They aren't a Stanley Cup contender this year, and I think they probably have an idea of what they're doing there. Not a terrible team, but also not a team that would want to trade a 24-year-old for a 34-year-old to think that they can make the Stanley Cup Finals. That just doesn't. That's not a sensible one to me. Now, if they're going to go with youth and in their prime, that might be the kind of team because Seattle right now is essentially tied for the last playoff spot. Seattle might be a team that would be interested in a guy like Kyrou. But I also think that Seattle probably wants to offload some of their older players. They want to do both. They want to get younger and make a move for the playoffs this year.
Mike Meyer, our Blues insider here on STL Sports Central, is checking in on the chat. Donnie, yes. Thomas, no. Blues need and can build around Thomas moving forward. Donnie is out of a core age group and can fetch more to help build towards future and longevity.
And that's why the Cardinals would not be averse to moving him. But at the same time, the Cardinals are not averse to having him on their team, because I think if we can all agree right now, the best leadoff hitter the Cardinals have on their roster is Brendan Donovan. There's no question about it. Also a Gold Glove quality fielder. He's a really good player, and he's 28 years old. That's a really good thing to have in baseball. So the Cardinals have no problem at all with having Brendan Donovan on their team. It's just that because of the value that he possesses, if they can get real value for him, then they would be willing to make the move. But yeah, you can build around Robert Thomas going forward. I think, and I'd like to know what Mike thinks about this with Thomas. Thomas, this is beyond the analytics thing, so this might not be a fair question for you. But what you hear from people within the organization is that while Thomas is an extraordinarily gifted player, obviously he's a point-of-game guy, he can play 200 feet. They would like his 200-foot habits to be better. But there's also, I think, Matthew, questions about him being able to put a team on his shoulders and saying, okay, guys, we need to win this game, and I'm just the guy to do it. All the numbers in the world can't tell you whether he's that guy. Mm-hmm. But there are some guys you win because of and some guys you win with. You can definitely win with Robert Thomas. I just don't think that he's a guy based on now 8 years in the NHL. I don't think he's a guy you win because of. I don't think that he's going to put a team on his shoulders, but that doesn't mean he's not a great player, because he is a good player. You need those kind of players. He's a support player. He's just not one of those guys where you say, like, there were times like Connie Smythe winner Ryan O'Reilly. Ryan O'Reilly wasn't nearly as talented as Robert Thomas, but during a lot of that playoff run when he was healthy, Ryan O'Reilly put the Blues on his shoulders. Brett Hull was a guy, because of the extraordinary talent, could put the Blues on his shoulders and win games. But he also, I was telling the story today on the TV show about the game in L.A. where Brian sent one of his brothers out. I think it was Ron Sutter, in a game in L.A. with about 4 minutes left, sends his brother out. And this is in Jeremy Rutherford's book. Sends his brother out to replace Hull at right wing. And Hull said, get off the ice. There's like 4 minutes left. So Ronnie comes back, and Brian Sutter is the coach, and Brian said, what happened? And Ron said, well, he wouldn't let me come out. He wouldn't let me get on the ice. He wouldn't come out of the game. Another shift, stoppage in play. Brian says sends Roddy out again. Now there's like 3:20 left. Holly says, get the hell out of here. Get off the ice. So Ronnie comes back. Brian says, what happened? Same thing. So now another shift, you got like 2:40 left. And Brian is yelling at Hull, get the blank off the ice, get the blank off the ice. Now you get to like 2 minutes left, 150 and 130. And finally, and it's a tie game. And Hull scores because he can, right? Yeah. Because he can. So there's like a minute and a half left. And he's had like a 2.5 minute shift. And he comes back to the ice, and in quintessential Hully fashion, he says, we aren't going to overtime in Los Angeles. And so that he stayed on the ice so that he could score the winning goal. That is the ability to put your team on your shoulders, and that's called athletic arrogance. And there are some players that have it, and that's not a bad thing. That's not personal arrogance. It's athletic arrogance. And it's a really good thing to have, and I don't think Robert Thomas has that.
It's also a great lesson of never let anything cut into party time.
No doubt. One other point, just if we want to make a compare and contrast, when we talk about athletic arrogance, there's nobody on the St. Louis sports scene who could do better for himself and his team by developing a high level of athletic arrogance than
Jordan Walker?
No. Victor Scott II.
Oh, okay.
Victor Scott II needs to become Vince Coleman.
That's a great point.
He needs to be that guy that says, I can't be stopped. You can try to throw me out, but you aren't going to. And he's right. And Vince Coleman was that way right off the bat. And if Victor Scott II would develop a level of athletic arrogance where when he gets on first base, everybody in the ballpark his team, the other team, every fan knows he's going to go, and he still steals the base. That's what you need.
Well, and Super Bowl 60 deserves a sports book built for the moment. And DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 60, puts you right in the center of the biggest game of the year. And when anything can happen during the Super Bowl, DraftKings has your back with early exit. If a player goes down in the first half, you still get paid out in cash immediately once your bet settles. No bonus bets, no waiting. And I'm looking at that over-under, the early over-under of 45.5. I think this game's going under, Matthew. I just, with as good as the defense is for New England, and I believe New England was 4th in the league in points against. Seattle was 1st in the league in points against. 45.5 for me is a pretty good number, and I think I would go with the under there. New England, like the Rams, and they didn't do it, has a tendency to take the ball away, and I just don't feel good about the matchup of the New England offense against the Seattle defense. I worry for their ability to score points. Granted, they didn't score in the second half yesterday, but they didn't score when the weather was good against Denver either. And I think Seattle's defense is every bit as good as Denver's defense. So I'm going to play the under here, at least in the early going.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I mean, these defenses are both absolutely killer. I don't know if you saw the stat, but Matthew Stafford is literally the only quarterback who's been able to break down the Seahawks defense this year. He did it multiple times, and the Rams were never enough beyond that. So, yeah, the Seahawks defense is incredible. We saw what the Patriots defense can do, even if it was against a limited Denver Broncos offensive attack. Still, that Patriots defense, we know what Mike Vrabel's all about. I'm with you on the under. I'm absolutely with you on the under.
And if you're new to DraftKings, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code STL Sports right there on your screen. That's code STL Sports. Turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins in partnership with DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 plus. Physically present in Missouri. Eligibility restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets, which expire in 7 days. Additional terms at dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer.
There's a thing online, and I think it was a Reds pitcher that threw over something like 13 times with Vince, and Vince still stole the base. It was great. So that's what Victor Scott needs to become.
Jay Box says, just keep Donovan. He's not making hardly anything. Any other teams will probably not give you anything great for prospects.
And to add to your point, if you don't know if you're going to have Lars Nootbaar on opening day, not that it would be a bad thing to play Ryan Church in left, because you can find out a little bit about him. But if Brendan Donovan is your opening day left fielder, and you have that presence not only on the field but in your clubhouse, the leader of this team, and the leader of this team last year and kind of down the stretch the year before, it's Brendan Donovan. This is a guy that takes care of and nurtures young players. You know, what he's got a lot of? He's got a lot of Alexander Steen in him. Brendan Donovan is a guy that cares about everybody on the team. He cares about winning. He makes sure that everybody's doing okay. When players come up to the major leagues, who buys the big bottle of champagne and has everybody on the roster sign it? It's Brendan Donovan. So that's the kind of guy that you love having on your team. And so it's not a bad thing to have Donovan be the leader in your clubhouse. Might not be a great thing to have him traded, because I don't know who takes on that role if he departs. But I don't know about you, Matthew. I wouldn't be brokenhearted at all, especially if Nootbaar isn't available. If Donovan was your opening day left fielder, Scott in center, Walker in right, and then we know Gorman, Wynn, Weatherholt, Burley, and then whomever is behind the plate, and then figure out who your DH is going to be. But if Donovan's on the team playing left field, or even if he's playing third base, I'm good with that.
Yeah, I have no problem with it, and it seems like it's more likely than it ever has been. We got this from Bub 298. That's different than Bubs. We got different people running around here.
Bub.
I and maybe the Blues see Thomas as a piece of foundation on which to build a good team. Now, if he had quote unquote personality issues in or out of the locker room, I would have a different opinion. And I wonder if Bub's opinion changes based on, kind of your thought process, or if there's other people around who have a similar thought process to you of like, is this guy the athletically ignorant leader you need?
Yeah, well, just athletically arrogant.
Arrogant, not ignorant. My apologies. Yeah. Arrogant. Obviously.
And
Jesus.
No, he's a talented player. There's a guy that for the Stars the other night, scored a couple of goals. Matt Duchene. Matt Duchene had the worst reputation around hockey, right? As a cancer, as a guy that you didn't want on your team. Really talented, super talented. And now that's not what we're talking about with Robert Thomas. But if he was a piece of the foundation to build a good team, can I go back to the last one, the one about Robert Thomas?
Yeah, my bad.
Because Robert Thomas is a really good guy. And I don't want anybody misconstruing what I'm saying here. He's not a powerful personality. Now, as this, I see Thomas as a piece of the foundation on which to build a good team. Now, if he had personality issues are what I'm talking about with what Matt Duchene had. In or out of the locker room, I'd have a different opinion. You're exactly right. He's not an overwhelming personality. He doesn't appear to be a guy that's going to the rest of the room and being that leader type, like Steiner was, like David Perron was, like Braden Chen is. But that doesn't mean that he can't help you win. And he does not have any, at least as far as I can tell, personality issues. Sometimes the Blues get frustrated because he thinks he should do better and he looks up into the rafters when he doesn't score a goal. But that's not a bad thing. That means he's just trying to compete. But I agree with you 100% in that he can be a piece of a foundation, but I don't think that he's going to lead the group.
Yeah, I think that's a fair take. It's not different than what we've heard about him
and
for
I like
a
him.
couple years.
And
Yeah,
by the way, he's not immature either. He's he's got a kid. He's married. He's got a kid now. He's fine, but he's just. I think we can all figure out what we're talking about here in terms of leadership. You can tell the guy is on the ice. We all knew
also
when Ryan O'Reilly arrived and Petro was wearing the C, but we all knew that the guy that was the engine was Ryan O'Reilly with the work ethic and teaching young players. He was the guy. And it's not a negative to not be that guy. Some guys have that innate personality and some guys don't.
Also, for all we know, 2 years from now, when he's 28 years old, maybe he has a second kid. For all we know, Robert Thomas might be a guy who grows into that as he gets older.
Absolutely.
As he gets more comfortable being a vocal player, as he gets more comfortable in the city and being a leader in that way. This isn't some static thing that can never change. It's just he's 25, 26 right now, and he's still got some growing up to do.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things.
We all?
Because he's been around for such a long time, because he's in his 8th year now.
Yes,
I think we expect him to be that guy and a lot of guys show up. I mean, Brian Sutter was a rookie or second year, and he was the captain of the team. Some guys develop those traits at different levels, and maybe Thomas will never develop those. But bottom line here, guys, we're talking about trading Robert Thomas, and let's go back to those odds. You had plus 5,000.
No. I had plus 500 on Thomas.
500,
maybe a little higher.
Yeah, I would definitely not make that bet, even though it's a nice value bet and you could win a few bucks. I would not bet on him being traded, because I think the Blues see the same traits and skill set that all of us see, and they see the age and they see the contract, and they say, you know what? If this is the biggest problem we have, we should be a lot better than we are. He's certainly not a problem.
Also, and again, to me, it's material that a lot of the rumors around Thomas are just the same thing, kind of over and over. Got a couple more comments, and then I hope Mike Meyer is still in the chat, because I really want him to be here for this next little Blues segment we do. Donovan has 2 years. We need some veteran leadership. He's cost controlled, and he's a good, not great, versatile player. If he gets moved, 2027 makes more sense, or even the trade deadline.
Yeah, and I guess what you have to do, and the Cardinals and baseball know more about this than we do, but it might not make any sense for teams to be trading for players for the 2027 season, because there might not be a 2027 season.